Welcome to FlamesNation Radio. As usual, it's Ryan and Shane coming at you. Unlike per usual, it's sweet preseason edition of FlamesNation Radio. As usual, we're brought to you by our delightful friends at DoorDash and the fine folks at Eau Claire Distillery, the makers of Rupert's Whiskey, the official whiskey of the Calgary Flames. It's preseason time, Shane. We're disclosure, folks, just so you get a peek behind the curtain. We're recording this immediately preceding the Flames game on Tuesday night in Seattle. This will be up on Wednesday before the Flames game against Edmonton at home. Yes. So we've got 2 games in the can, and we're getting ready for the next 2. Shane, the first 2 games, kind of interesting. Historically, folks, the Flames opened their preseason schedule with a home and home. They call it they throw a baseball term at you. It's the split squad.
It's the split squad game, see?
If you don't follow the fine folks at Blue Jays Nation or otherwise follow America's pastime, what typically happens in spring training is that they play a crap ton of games. And one of the ways they help the young baseballers get the reps in is that half of the guys stay here, half of the guys go to Tempe, and then you play 9 innings and then you come back. And they just sort of do different combinations of guys at different places. So historically, the Flames do a split squad affair with either Edmonton or Vancouver. This year it's Vancouver. They send the AHL guys and some fringe bodies to Vancouver to play against the good players from the Vancouver Canucks, and Vancouver does the same thing. They send their fringy guys to Calgary and they play against the Flames regulars. The Canucks held out a few regulars, not too many. Thatcher Demko didn't play, a couple of the defensemen, but for the most part, it was the A squad for Vancouver. Similarly in Calgary, the Flames, they off the top of my head, no Markstrom, no Kadri, no Tanev, no Shillington, and no Mangiapane for various reasons, which we'll get into. But for the most part, in Calgary, the Flames played their A squad. I was covering the Flames A squad versus the Abbotsford Canucks game live from the Saddle Dome. The Flames won 4-0. They were pretty good. They deserved to win. The more interesting outcome, Shane, is in my
3-2 OT.
Yeah, the Flames went into Rogers Arena and outworked the Vancouver. Outworked what was objectively on paper a more talented Canucks team, and that's kind of interesting.
It's a little. I like what Daryl said about it afterwards. Someone asked him about the vets and what they're doing, and he says, "Well, they're working on their own stuff." He goes, "They're not trying to earn a spot. They already have their spot. They're working on their own stuff." So, like the Vancouver guys want to get back into the habit of doing their regular thing, like the regulars getting into the routine of their game, and let's be real, it's the first game of the year. You're playing against a bunch of high-powered kids that are wanting to impress. If you have a veteran-laden team like you do usually at home, like you said, unwritten rule, the vets kind of stay at home for most of the preseason if you can. You got to fill out your roster with a certain amount of NHL games, I think, for the preseason.
Yeah, I think there's like a rule they had to have 8 guys in each roster.
Like tonight against Seattle, it's pretty
Let's be completely honest. You're not asking Jonathan Hubert to go to Vancouver and Seattle for games that don't count.
No.
Typically, the higher the pecking order you are, the less likely you are to go to these things. So
they set the fourth line and the Wranglers. They set the fourth line in the and last year's version of the Wranglers basically.
And they played pretty well. I thought
they played their ass off. It was good.
I did not expect to see a multi-point game from AHL signing Mitch McLean. But Mitch McLean, that's the from top people I know who covered him when he played with the Admirals in Milwaukee. The line was, well, he's not a great player, but he works his tail off. And he was playing, I believe, on a line with Klapka and Ben Jones, and they outworked Vancouver and scored. He scored one very nice goal. Here's the cool thing. So the Canucks had a bunch of power plays. The Flames AHL guys mostly killed off the power plays. The nice thing was, so after a power play, Ilya Mikheyev, who had a not good game against the Flames in a couple ways. One, he got his pocket picked in the neutral zone by Mitch McLean, and I'm sorry, I love you, Mitch McLean. That probably you shouldn't be picking the pocket of established NHL players. Something went wrong there. And then Mitch McLean went in on a 2-on-1, a give and go,
right out of the box,
a give and go zone entry, and Emilio Peterson fed Mitch McLean, and Mick McLean went chop cheddar on Spencer Martin. And yeah, like that's goal scorer's goal. And it was a bunch of guys who are trying to prove themselves. Emilio Peterson heading into the third year of his entry-level deal. I don't think it's unfair to say that he is probably a guy who wants to stake a claim to a spot in the pecking order, because when you're heading into the third year of ELC and you have, there's some first year guys coming in, Jack Beck's a year away from going pro, some other guys, the elephant in the room is, especially on the right side, if you're a righty in the Flames system and you're not already in the NHL roster, you have Matt Coronado up here because come March, April, he might be coming in. So you have a limited window to stake a claim to a spot, because if on the right side, Toffoli's under contract for another couple of years, Coleman's under contract for a while, Mangiapane can play either side, Dubé can play either side. So if you're one of these young guys, if you're Klapka, Phillips, even Walker Dorr, any of these guys,
any winger, really,
the clock is ticking if you're a winger, because this will sound very mean. Life isn't fair, kids, unfortunately. And first round picks, especially first round picks who can score goals, get opportunities.
Yeah. Coronado's shots already would be in the top 5 on the team. Just I'm like the Flames don't have any pure other outside of Lindholm. Their pure actual distance snipers are not there. Coronado is
maybe Toffoli. I think Toffoli's up there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I also said top 5, right? Like Lindholm's is the best right now on the team, and Coronado's could push that. Like Coronado's already, its shot could already push that. He's still, the shot's only one tiny aspect of the game. You got to get in position and all that stuff. But his shot, it's why I wanted Cole Sillinger that draft too, because Cole Sillinger's shot was very similar.
You need guys who can score goals.
And having a guy that can rip it from the top of the circles and still beat the goalie clean because he doesn't need traffic. That's rare. That's rare. And you want it, and Coronado has that. So that's a little X factor that people can work their whole lives and not get that. So it's you're right. It's up there. You've got to be thinking about it, and you've got to impress. And 2 guys really did. And Mike Gould wrote an article, both of them. Nice tricky title there too.
Yeah, Klapka's a big body who is aware that he's a big body. And I think the fact, he played a couple years of pro in Czechia. He played in a couple years in Extraliga and in the minor leagues, and he also played in North America a little bit. Yeah. So he knows the style, he knows the systems, and this will sound mean, but I don't mean it to be mean. I think Klapka has a level of self-awareness now after playing with some established pros in Czechia. And so if you're a 20-year-old guy, now he's 22, if you having that experience in the European system as playing sort of down the rotation and trying to be effective, you figure out how to make the most of your minutes, because if you don't make the most of your minutes, you don't get much more. And I thought, that's one of the things I was really impressed. I think Daryl Sutter was asked about his skating. His skating is not bad for a big guy. Daryl pointed out, he's like, Daryl had some nice praise for him. And I also point out, like Michael mentioned, Matthew Phillips' pass on that game-winning goal to in overtime to Michael Stone. We know Michael Stone can shoot the puck, but it was just a nice little play. I think there was 4 of them on the ice. They made they won a face-off, couple little passes, and boom, it's in the back of the net.
There was enough room to make that pass and not mess up, and Matthew Phillips made that pass. That was on a needle through 2 legs and 3 sticks, I think, right to Michael Stone's tape. So that was, a lot of people are like, that's a good pass. I'm like, that's an unreal pass. And Pelche's pass to get it up to Phillips too, through a couple legs too.
Pelche having the awareness to sort of bring it up to the top of the zone, see what's developing, and then quickly get the pass over. Because of the faceoff win, by the time the Canucks PK had a chance to register what the Flames were doing, it was already on Stone's stick. So winning faceoffs is important, kids.
I think a lot of these young kids, they come up and they feel the need to be quick and pressure and make a choice right away. We saw it with Poirier, and everyone's mentioned the giveaway to Pullman. He really put him in a bad spot. These kids are pressured to make, Flames talk about pace. They're pressured.
I thought that was Pullman's giveaway. It was a pass, and then Pullman just sort of hung out with the puck going, what do I do now, for like half a second. There
wasn't really an outlet for him to go to. I'd put it on too young. Both of them.
I thought Poirier had a very good game. I thought he offensively he had a good game.
he gave up just as many opportunities as he created. That's the Sam Bennett effect. I call that the Sam Bennett effect. Everyone was always like, why isn't Sam Bennett getting more chances? I'm like, well, Sam Bennett used to give up 3 high danger chances for every 3 he got. So like, you don't want that. You'd rather win the high danger battle. So, but hey, Toy is young. He's got years to go, but
he's 20. He's 20.
Yeah, years to develop, and he's got a good system, and they're going to teach him the right way to do it. Flames aren't in a rush to develop any of their kids. They're going to bring them along, and when they're ready, they're ready. And that's the best part. They're going to have a constant contending AHL team, which will help. It'll help them play further. And that's the kicker. It'll help them play meaningful games in spring. And that's where you really develop anybody.
Yeah, Daryl wants as many of the kids in the system as possible to play as long as they can.
And long term, it just makes you better because there's always someone to fill the hole, and someone can fill the hole properly. So Matthew Phillips stood out to me in Vancouver more than anybody. Constantly, the game was so choppy though, Pike. It was power play, penalty kill, power play, penalty kill, power play, penalty kill all night.
It was like that here too.
There was no length. It's preseason for the refs too. I get it. But I mean, give us a 10-minute stretch of 5-on-5, please, so we can at least see what everyone's going to do on consecutive shifts. It was bad. I think there was like 8 opportunities per team in Vancouver. So 16 power plays total. It was just a mess.
It wasn't that bad in Calgary, but it was also, yeah, there was a few of them that you're like, what are you doing, guys?
Oh yeah. And the other guy that stood out and just, he's been consistent all the time. It's Connor Zary. Connor Zari's been, he's like a half a step better than he was at the end of last year.
They had Connor Zary in Calgary playing on a line with Sonny Milano and Cody Eakin.
Ptos, yeah.
When you have 2 fairly established NHLers playing on a line with a 20-year-old kid with a year of pro under his belt. And I mean, as a compliment, Zary didn't stand out. Zary looked perfectly at home playing with 2 guys with that level of experience. And
yeah. That's okay.
That's the hope.
That's good. that's the hope. He wasn't behind. He wasn't causing turnovers.
He was exactly where he needed to be, and I think that's good. In Calgary, I think the difference was like the Flames, like they worked their power play pretty well. Milano actually did a nice job drawing a penalty that led to the power play that Hubert scored on. Mm-hmm. Milano just basically just got a pass and said, "I'm going to the slot," and then he made someone haul him down. And that's the thing you have to do if you're a PTO guy. You want to be a net positive guy for your team. And, so far he was. Cody Eakin, I didn't notice as much, even with Cody Eakin scoring that goal. I think it was basically a situation where Backlund put it right on his stick with a couple of nice plays. And I think Poirier got a swipe at it too. It was just.
Eakins was a third attempt. And it was all caused by Backlund.
Yeah.
Backlund standing up at the
Backlund just going, I'm the F3. I'm the F1. I'm just gonna stand here. I'm gonna see if the guy comes at me, and he just
takes it, goes.
Yeah, and it was I forget which Canucks defender it was, but his body language screamed, "What? You're not supposed to be here. It's the preseason. What are you doing?" So I mean, Backlund ended with I think 2 assists on the game. It was. The Calgary game was a game that the Flames were expected to win, and they did. The Vancouver game was a game that the Canucks were expected to win, and they didn't. And they didn't because, the Canucks had to mount a fairly dramatic comeback because the Flames outworked them. And I thought Dustin Wolf was very good. I thought the PK was very good for the most part. I thought there's in the Vancouver game, there were very few negatives to be had. I think everyone, even the guys who didn't really stand out very much, asserted themselves pretty well. In the Calgary game, I thought the same thing was very true. I thought probably the weakest player wearing red in Calgary was Colton Pullman.
He's 7 high danger chances against 0-4. So
Colton Pullman, for folks who didn't watch a lot of Heat games last year, Colton Pullman was basically a utility defenseman. He was useful for the Heat because he could play with anybody. He was reliable. His offensive talent is what it is. He was a 2-way defenseman in college. He's a defensive specialist in the AHL. I don't know if he has much in the way of NHL upside, although defensemen can just pop at weird times, and he's reliable. In the preseason, that game, he was less reliable. He looked rusty, but a lot of people on both teams did. So
it was it was very much all around both games from start to finish.
The
preseason affair.
The biggest story of the preseason games was we're back in the rooms now, and for inside baseball guys, one of the best things about doing what I am able to do and I'm fortunate enough to do is that you get to go and get to know the players a bit. You get to sort of stand around with a dozen of your colleagues, awkwardly putting microphones in a stranger's face and asking them about why they did the thing in the sports ball game. But sometimes it's really fun. A lot of the time it's really fun. The last 2 years, we have not been in the locker room since February 2020. Actually, March 2020. I think the Vegas game where the Flames lost 5-2 to Vegas, the very last game before the pandemic, I believe on International Women's Day in March 2020, because I believe that was the game where Cassie and Leah Hextall called the game, and I forget who the other people were. It was a really cool game. They had
all women's broadcast,
they had a full women production crew. It was really cool, and unfortunately, that kind of got swept by the wayside by the way the world happened to unfold after that. But I'll always remember that game because it was a decent game. The Flames just didn't have the horses in the third period, and we went to the room and talked to them and did not realize we wouldn't get back to the room for 2.5 years. So last night was Sunday night was pretty fun. We got to talk to Jonathan Hubert. Was really funny. He has a really dry sense of humor, at least so far. He mentioned that he felt the altitude, and so we asked him a bit about the altitude. He sort of joked. I asked him, I'm not a professional athlete, kids. I'm not much of an athlete at all these days. But I asked him, with the elevation, I've talked to some friends of mine who are athletes and are work in sports science, and asked them how does it impact them. And they gave very similar answers to what Jonathan Huberdeau said. When you hit when you have the wind in the third shift, he also mentioned he was absolutely just pooped after the first few minutes of the group skates. So your lungs get used to the elevation. But he was really funny. He gave a good answer, and that was the biggest story I think of the post preseason scrums, that Jonathan Huberdeau he's working on getting used to the elevation. But he was, for a guy who was not used to the elevation, he was pretty decent. I mean, Jonathan Hubert.
Well, he also went from Sunrise, Florida at sea level to Calgary by the mountains. So it's a pretty drastic change for him to I don't think Nazem Kadri's too worried. Nazem Kadri's actually getting a benefit here. He's going down in altitude. So
I think it's worth asking Kadri when he gets to play if he notices any differences. But
it would be way easier for him.
Yeah, so folks, hopefully hopefully if you get a chance to go to a preseason game, you get to come out. There's the things you need to know. There's a new beer supply at the Saddle Dome. It's Original 16. No more Bud, at least no Bud or Bud Light. But Original 16 is Canadian and it's very good. So if you get a chance,
they renamed the one thing the Ultra Zone too.
Yes. Yeah. The King Club is now the Ultra Zone. There's also the big concession place that used to be called the Dog Pound or the Dog House is now a pocket dog stand. So they kept it to hot dogs, but there's a much larger pocket dog location.
Very important though, there's also in the picture, pointed out by my lovely girlfriend Mo, is there's beer taps at the pocket dog station. So you only have to go to the one spot to get your beer and your pocket dog. You don't have to hit up two places anymore. Fantastic.
For as long as the Saddle Dome's in use, they want to make it a useful place and a fun place. So beware that. Also, just a word of warning, they're doing a bunch of construction in the area between now and the end of October. 12th Avenue in front of the casino and the Olympic Way intersection of the way in are kind of a mess and will be a mess for a while. So our recommendation is either take transit, give yourself extra time if you're coming from the downtown side, or come from the south on the Earlton McLeod Trail, the southern entrance if you're going to park. And be prepared to be impressed by how fast the BMO Center expansion is coming together. Because I remember when we were there for Garbage Bag Day after at the very end of May, it was basically just sort of a framework. It looked like a base skeleton, and now it's starting to fill in pretty well. So it's gonna appear very quickly in front of us, and I don't even think it opens for another year and a half or 2 years or something. But I think they want to get the shell up, and the shell's coming quickly. So beware when you come in, folks. There's going to be a little bit construction-y for a little while, at least till the end of October. And, I imagine there'll probably be other stuff happening after that. The construction they're doing right now is actually green line construction. They're moving utilities so that I think they don't start. I think in the spring, they're starting the actual construction of the green line or the main work. But
the one that go northeast.
Yeah, but they have to move stuff out of the way underground before they can tunnel and do all the stuff. So they're doing all that stuff now. And unfortunately, they couldn't do it during the stampede because there was a stampede going on. So you gotta live with some discomfort.
There's 4 seasons in Alberta, Pike. There's mud, there's construction, there's winter, and then there's second construction. Those are the 4 seasons.
No, there's only 2. There's winter and construction. Those are our 2 categories.
There's mud. There's mud season.
I think you're giving the climate a bit too much credit there.
But they should be able to see in my estimation, a veteran heavy lineup on Wednesday, because tonight against the Kraken here in 10 minutes, it's a pretty young roster.
Yeah, so it's we won't spend too much time on the Seattle of it all, but if it'll be Shane Wright playing against the Flames on Tuesday night right after we record, so I'm kind of excited about that because Shane Wright pretty good at hockey.
Jagger Furcus as well. Shane Wright
Moose Jaw Warriors.
Jagger Furcus was the first player taken in the second round, I believe, by Seattle, and he should have been a first round pick, folks, in my personal estimation. He dropped because of height reasons. Surprise. Anyone ever hear of Johnny Gaudreau or Alex DeBrincat? But anyways, it should be fun to watch tonight. And good. Yeah. There's some still skilled young players. That's the thing about the preseason is you can get these skilled young players viewing on your TV. Sportsnet Now is the new NHL streaming device in Canada.
And the Flames are streaming all the preseason games on their website. So if you're not able to make it down, or you don't want to travel to Winnipeg, Vancouver, Seattle, or Edmonton, you don't have to. You can watch it on your couch in your PJs. Shane made a call out for questions because because we were aware that doing this in between games, our game chat will become very, very old very quickly. I expect by the time you listen to this, Lucas Siona will have been assigned back to the Seattle Thunderbirds of the WHL. By the end of the week, there'll be a lot of cuts. So spending too much time on players that might not be here in 2 weeks may not be a great idea for evergreen content. But the fun thing is Shane put out a call for questions to make this a little bit more of an evergreen episode. So Shane, you might as well dive in, my friend.
I'll start with someone that texted me because they listened to our podcast first. So he had to listen to our last podcast in order to get the question in early. It's from Nate Thomas of the Quack Report. And he asked us, we've heard a lot of talk why Sonny Milano would be great for the Flames top 9. He wants to know our opinion on why shouldn't he be signed by the Flames. Pike, why shouldn't he be signed? What reason would you think?
My big question would be, is he willing to work cheap? And my other question is, okay, if he doesn't work out on that third line, because I think the folks had him penciled in as sort of like the quasi second, third line on the wing with Mangiapane and Kadri. But let's say he just doesn't click offensively in that top 9. And, granted, he was injured for a chunk of at the end of last year, and that impacted his ability to score. But playing hurt, playing not hurt, whatever, he wasn't terribly effective offensively in the second half of last season.
No, he dropped off pretty quick, yeah.
And so if he doesn't have the offensive consistency, and he's shown his offensive consistency in spurts throughout his playing career. He was much more consistent last year, which is why his numbers are so good. But if he doesn't have the offensive consistency, does he have the defensive consistency to play a checking shutdown line? Like, could he play PK? Could he be like, if they need to rotate bodies around, could he kill penalties? Could he play on the fourth line? Like that'd be one of the things I'd be concerned about, just in terms of how versatile can he be if he needs to be used in a different role.
And my thought process after he sent that was, well, why shouldn't he be signed? I'm like, well, that would mean someone impressed enough to take the spot that's open from him. Now that's not to say it's going to happen, but I mean, Matt, like I said, Matty Phillips had a hell of a game. Now, I think Matt Phillips is going to make the final roster. Personally, I don't think so. I hope he does. He's a very skilled player, but that someone is going to have to over-impress, be heads and tails consistently above what he can bring every single day, because we've got years of track record of Sonny Milano. We don't have years of track record of these prospects. So they're going to have to show every second of camp that they are there. One thing that intrigues me is Adam Ruzicka is going to play on the wing tonight. So that is something.
I did a radio hit Tuesday morning with the guys in the morning show, Fan 960, and
Russick and Rowan.
I find they're not, the new guys aren't on yet. It was Patrick Dumas and our buddy
Logo.
But I think the big challenge, like for Ruzicka, he's been mostly a center. He was mostly a center in junior. He was mostly a center in the AHL to this point. When he came up in the NHL, when he's been used, he's mostly a center. And so, yeah, he could become a pretty decent winger. But if the idea is they're going to, the concern I would have about putting Ruzicka on the wing is, are they going to do better at him? And by that, I mean, the reason I think Mangiapane worked so well and developed so thoroughly in his roles is that his roles have been very clear. He's been a winger the entire time. They're like, Andrew, you're playing this position. Here's what we expect from you. And going from the fourth line to the second line on the wing, your defensive responsibilities don't change a lot. Your offensive responsibilities, you're asked to take charge of the game a bit more, and your role changes because you're used slightly different situations, but the position doesn't change. Center is different, so different. And if he gets used to NHL wing, it's difficult to put him back at center.
Yeah, yeah. He'd be a real effective forechecking winger if he was the guy that was in there and in the corners, because the center is the guy that's always the defensively responsible one, ideally. So, if you've got Backlund, Kadri, or Lindholm up the middle playing defense, having that 6'4" body down deep would be good. But why shouldn't they sign Milano? It's because someone like that took the opening. The opening's there. It's someone's going to grab it. Is it Milano? Is it Ruzicka? Is it someone else? We're going to find out, and we're going to find out in probably like a week. But
the question I would say, the question I have in my mind is, so Daryl Sutter talks about this quite a bit. The idea of someone's A game and their B game, as in if you're not at your best, is your B game pretty good? Like, is it consistent? It's pretty good.
Is it there's a minimum level they want? And the B game isn't at least that.
And that's the thing, because like for folks who wonder, like, why do the Flames like Brett Ritchie, for example? The Flames know Brett Ritchie's B game fairly well, and they seem to be fine with it. Same with Trevor Lewis, same with Lucic, same with all the guys they have. They have a lot of tape on Kevin Rooney, for example. That's why they want him as their fourth line center. So the big question is, like, say, can Phillips or Pelche or Ruzicka or any of these guys establish that their B game is a better bet than the B game from other guys? Because if the answer is yes, then I think that, to be honest, I think if you have the chance of bringing in a kid, like one of the guys you developed and using them, you might as well. It's you don't have to give up a contract spot. You don't have to give up anything, any opportunity cost to get them. But if Milano's B game is more consistent than the other guys, and they have a larger sample size from scouts of his B game at the NHL level, it's I think that's the challenge with the preseason games for the younger kids, because if you're playing and you're competing for spots with guys who've played a fair amount of NHL minutes, then they have a book on all these established players. They don't have as much of a book on, say, Jacob Pelche. So Pelche is writing his book in the preseason right now. This is what they're going to have to go off of, because they don't have anything else to go off of with him right now. So
they just have a year of like the 1 year in the A against the AHL level competition. Here's the thing. Last year, the Flames were completely fortunate with injuries. Knock on wood again. Odds are it's not going to happen again this year. People are going to get hurt. It happens all the time. That breeds opportunities for more kids and call-ups. Last year, we really just had Ruzicka. We made the Toffoli trade midway through the year.
Well, like Walker Duehr a little bit and Glenn Gaudin a little bit, but not so much that it made a difference.
I'm talking like 10 plus games. And it was really just Ruzicka, because then they had Stone and they gave Connor Mackey a few games, not that much. Valimaki got sent down early. Like it was really the team they had was the whole team throughout the whole year. There was hardly any substitutions. And you could argue Ruzicka was a real big member of that, because he was with them even on the bench for over half the season. So he's got the inside edge in my books to even just to make the roster, especially because he'd require waivers to go down at this point. but yeah, it's the pro tryout guys are getting prime opportunities. Sutter said so. He's like, these guys are going to be put in positions to show me what they can do, because that's why they're here. They're pros. So yeah, that was the first question.
That was a good question. Thank you.
The second question, because I made a joke that we were just going to talk about Cody Eakin and Sonny Milano's hair for 30 minutes, which luckily we didn't have to. Gorgeous flow, boys, both of you. He asked if we had any exclusives on what products they use.
No, I got a good look at, we did a scrum in the locker room with Cody Eakin. Whatever he uses, it's working, because that thing is silky and flowing. Like, he played a full game. I still think the best mane of hair on the team has to be Chris Tanev.
Without question.
Like, you look at it up close, like, it flows in the wind. There's no split ends. Like, he's just, whatever he's doing, he should be like, I feel this will sound very mean, and I'm sorry, Calgary, I love you. It's a shame that Chris Tanev isn't in like a major, like an American media market, because like, imagine him doing like Fabio level.
No, he'd be right in with the Head and Shoulders dudes, like Troy Polamalu. I can't even say his name. And like
Polamalu.
It's been a while. I apologize I doubt he's going to listen to this.
We're not going to enunciate. We're very bad at enunciating, but yeah, he's just amazing flow. Amazing.
I'll tell you one thing, and from someone who knows, he probably conditions his hair.
Yeah, I think that's the secret.
He conditions his hair regularly, folks. Just so you know, conditioner doesn't hurt. Shampooing it too much will kill it. But that's because I have a sister that's a hairdresser.
Yeah, so but the Milano's curls are just fantastic. Like, I have no idea. Like that, I think of all the hair on the team, I think his curls must be the biggest pain in the ass to maintain. If you know anyone with curly hair, like, sometimes it doesn't react well to humidity. Like, I imagine there's a lot of things that have to go into making those curls as curly as they are. His naturally curly hair.
Since we got into the hair, just before I move to the next question, my favorite of the last few years is when Luch went all tag team and bleached his hair. That was my favorite. That was like just him being the big burly man he is, and then just gets the bleach blonde, and it looks like cool, like 90s.
Who was the other guy that bleached his hair with
Ronaldo? It was Ronaldo.
Zach Ronaldo.
They bleached their hair and were together, but I was just like, that gives me like 90s vibes, like late 90s, early 2000s, like denim's the style. Let's go.
They were the Bash Brothers.
Yeah,
they were harkening back to the Mighty Ducks, and it's they were having fun with it. So what do we got next?
If Shillington is out past cutdown day, what happens to his roster spot?
If in the event, and we don't know much about what's going on with Oliver. Oliver, we hope everything's going okay with him and his family. In the event, I actually just been asking around about this to friends of mine in the CBA community. Yes, there's a text chain of us that email and text each other really nerdy CBA questions. So in the event that he is unable to start the season, he will be placed on what's known as non-roster, and it would be treated the same cap-wise as if he was injured in the preseason. And so unless the Flames ask the NHL for an exception, which they might, but there's a very narrow range of things you can ask for exceptions for. But unless they ask for an exception, his cap hit would count as normal, but his roster spot would be open.
So there's just a free extra spot.
It'd be like it'd be as if he's on RIR.
Not LTIR, just IR.
Yeah, he'd count against the cap, but you get a roster spot open.
So that one was from Sam. Thank you for that one, Sam. Wendy K asks, how often do PTOs result in a contract? And if they don't get a contract, are they just out of luck this season? The second one's yes, Wendy. The second one's yes.
The second one is basically go try. I think that the challenging thing, and I talked to some player agents about this, the challenging thing is this. Most national agencies, like, say, if you want to play for the Spengler, if you want to try playing the Worlds or whatever, most national associations are advising teams or advising players not to take jobs in Russia. And so what happened was, it's like, say, a lot of these guys who normally would have been playing in the KHL this season shifted over. And so there's a limitation for what's known as import spots, basically spots for non-domestic players in the Czech League, Slovakia, Switzerland, Finland, Sweden, Germany, basically every European league. And those spots are basically all full. And so there might be, they can release guys, they can, dump out contracts and move things around. And typically in about November, you do see a bit of shifting around before American Thanksgiving for some guys. They're playing in Europe and they don't like their ice time, or they're playing and they're homesick, or their wife is pregnant. There's any number of reasons why a player on a contract with a European team would decide this isn't for me. And then it opens up some spots, but typically there's not a lot. And so generally speaking, those guys who don't get PTOs tend to either drift around or they try to catch on in the AHL, which, again, the AHL, you're dealing with NHL clubs running AHL teams that have limited budgets. I mean, some of the teams, end up spending a bit more on players because they want to be competitive or they want to draw locally, but not all the teams are like that. So there's a lot of individuals, quirks to the PTO market, the post PTO market.
Well, yeah. And
I think usually it's what I'd say, there's probably 32 teams right now. I would reckon, actually, if you want to stall for me, I will check in Cap Friendly, because the folks at Cap Friendly have a PTO tracker.
So yeah, you look that up. What I'm going to say is that, by them staying in the AHL, injuries happen throughout the year as well. So in very rare cases, someone else will snag them out of camp, like when Calgary snagged Chris Versteeg from the Edmonton camp. Like, he spent the entire preseason in Edmonton and then signed in Calgary and came over to play their season. But by staying in the AHL and in North America, you're readily available. And you can play on an AHL deal and still make good money. Like let's not be real here. The old pro in the AHL playing for the Maple Leafs still gets like a full $700,000. But like, even then you can make $300,000, $400,000 a year on an AHL only deal. And usually those have an out clause to allow you to sign in the NHL if anyone comes calling. So your exposure is still there. People can still regularly watch you if they need, and you're not totally poached instead of being overseas and having to come over. Because if you play overseas and have to come over, you have to go through waivers. And someone should ask the old Flames back in 2013 about that.
Not anymore. They changed that rule.
Oh, okay. See,
last year league wide, there was about less than a dozen. Usually it's about a dozen players who are in PTOs that ended up getting contracts
throughout the league. Yeah,
throughout the league. So you're looking at about, I'd say, one for every 3 teams will sign.
Yeah, like maybe it's like an 8% success rate. Yeah. Like maybe something. I'm not going to do the math right now because.
But yeah, like I think in Calgary, Milano has a good chance. Stone has a good chance. A few other guys probably less so. I can't see the Flames signing Eakin and Milano, for example.
No, there's not enough cap room for that either, especially when we factor in the fact that Shillington's cap is going to count no matter what. They have 1.5 million in room, and like, let's be real, Milano's not signed because he wants better payday. Like that's most likely. But there's only so much money in the league, and there's only so much money on teams that are willing to compete. So, you've got, like you said it, one of the things on the earlier questions was, is he willing to work for cheap? So last question comes from Brian Baston of On the Forecheck. He's a Nashville Predators writer. This is a little sarcastic. He says, how much do you regret letting future Hart Trophy winner Calle Jarnkrok go? And I answered, I'll say this for Jarnkrok. This guy had terrible luck. A lot of guys for the Flames in the playoffs had just absolutely shit puck luck. Forgive my French. Guys who probably should have scored but didn't. Jarnkrok a lot until the last game. Toffoli pretty much the entire time. Gaudreau was snake bit for a good chunk of the first round. Kachuk was hurt. Snake bitting.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, but Jarnkrok, he was brought in to be a good third line center and to move the needle, and he didn't. His possession game was good. And did he score a lot? No. Was he expected to score a lot? No. I mean,
he got robbed.
If he scored more, he wouldn't have been so inexpensive. And he's signed with Toronto, and he's getting regular person rich in Toronto, not NHL rich. But he's doing well in preseason, but it's also preseason. So take it with the appropriate grain of salt. I mean, you much rather perform well in preseason than not, but if you're gonna go nuts, I mean, James Neal scored a goal for Columbus. I don't think anyone's suddenly going, I don't think
Real deal.
I don't think Jarmo Kekalainen is rushing out to prepare a contract for him, and I don't think the folks at Nationwide Arena are running to the concession stands or running to the merch stand being like, make sure you got enough James Neal jerseys. It's preseason.
Yeah. My answer was there's only one reason anyone would go to Toronto for 4 years. I know, as a out of closet Leafs secondary Leafs fan. I mean, I've traveled to Buffalo to watch them blow a 2-1 lead in a matter of 30 seconds. He just obviously has the passion, like the passion TM. You'll see all the Steve Dangle stuff here, merch coming out from Media Day, and it's just a joke that the Leafs have that if you're going to play for the Leafs, you have to have the passion. So that's about all I got for Gallo and Croak, and that's it for the questions. That was a decent haul for us. Appreciate everyone that's been listening for the year. I think they were about a year here.
We're coming up on a year. I think next week will be the anniversary episode.
Everyone, I just want to thank everyone for listening to us, and this was great interaction. If you want to interact with us more, follow the Flames Nation account, follow Pike.
Yeah. And I think I like doing these. I like doing these Q&A ones. So I think we'll probably try to make this part of a regular rotation. Especially there's going to be weeks where I'm covering games live. Shane's doing all his post game stuff. So there's going to be weeks where we have to record a day or so early and sort of release this on a game day like we're doing this week. So there's going to be weeks where trying to do timely to the minute analysis might not be our particular brand of whiskey. Rupert's whiskey from Eau Claire Distillery, the official whiskey.
That's some radio level transitioning, buddy. I like that.
But yeah, I think I like doing these things, and I'll say this. This will sound like me stealing a line from Daryl, and it definitely is. The fun thing about working in this market is that the fans are really smart and ask smart questions and really care passionately and intelligently. Mike Camilleri actually told me a story once that he thought the difference between Calgary and Montreal was you didn't have people in Calgary coming up to him in the grocery store yelling at him about the power play. And I always think about that when I think about Flames fans, because I get it, because no one's ever I've never heard any stories from Flames players about being accosted about the power play, partially because the power play has always been half decent, but also because of the respectfulness and intelligence of Flames fans for the most part. So thank you.
And they're professional people. You got to remember, they're real people. They got to live their lives. If they're at the grocery store, they're not there to get bombarded. So people in Calgary get that. We're a smart market. So, and
let's stay that way.
I think that's good, Mike. I think the game's about to kick in. We got all the questions done. We did a little preview.
So thank you everyone for listening. Again, I believe next week is our anniversary edition. We might not do anything special. We might do something special. I don't know yet. I've really planned this far ahead.
We got preseason games to cover first.
We'll see what we come up with next week. For Shane, I'm Ryan. As usual, our FlamesNation Radio is brought to you by the fantastic people at DoorDash. If you are hungry and you don't want to cook or leave the house, DoorDash is for you. And of course, the fine folks at Rupert's Whiskey at Eau Claire Distillery, the makers of Rupert's Whiskey, the official whiskey of the Calgary Flames. We will be back next week, I believe, barring any kind of weird schedule stuff, at our usual Wednesday recorded, Thursday posted time. In the interim, hopefully everybody enjoys the sweet, sweet joy of the chaos that is the preseason. We'll see you guys in a week or so. Take care.